BIC episode number 118. On this episode, we have a literal smorgasbord of topics. There's a lot. There may be a flaming hot Cheeto card slash snack slash card that we may be talking about, but we've also got a bunch of other things that we'll be touching on for sure. Silly card of the week forthcoming, which also may play into this. All that and more on this episode of the BIC podcast. Yes. Now you may be asking yourself, if you're watching the video version of this, where is the watchful gaze of Brett Favre? And that's a valid point. You know what I need to do? I need to bring him back. But what about Cheetozard week? Oh my. See, Brandon, we got all the technologies. Cheetozard week overlay for this week.
I just would like to say, Carlos might have done the YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
The Discord might be giving Carlos crap about
see, Will doesn't understand my passion for the Cheetozard. I am all aboard this train.
But I brought it to the Pokemon community's attention of the Discord and then said, screw it, I'm using it for my silly card of the week because how in the hell could you not? And then it just went off the rails even more. So here we are, Cheetozard week.
Listen, it's like Shark Week, only vastly superior. Could not be any more
It's
superior.
much more hotter.
It's unbelievable. It's sensational. I got a whole video out of it, and I've got an overlay out of it. This is already greatness. It is true greatness. And the silly card of the week, as always, is brought to us by our friends at AMG. See, it partially covers it, but we'll bring it back in a minute. So AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, and the AMG Collectibles website. All the links are in the description. We thank them for the support of the silly card of the week, the channel, the podcast, and Cheetozard. May the Cheetozard be with you. So needless to say, I'll bring it back in a minute. But needless to say, we kind of know who won the silly card of the week. But for the sake of completeness, I will give us the numbers so that we all have it included. The only true democracy in this very world. So this week, we had, I believe, 43 total votes. So thank you all for a rebound from last week. We appreciate that. Now, I do want to point out one thing. The Harold being confused over it all had 14% of the popular vote. Eric's variation, which I put in quotation marks, got 23% of the vote. But I got to point something out. Eric's card is literally the normal card. Yeah, I don't know if you all understood. Like, it was Eric is just making fun of a small UFC man who's going to kill him. He's making fun of a physical deformity. There is nothing wrong with that card.
No, that guy's big for his body. Okay, and I know for a fact because I've been sending examples all week to you guys,
which none of which have anything to do with this individual.
I was going to expose that. I'm glad that you admitted it because I was going to let everybody know that this has bothered Eric so bad that he's literally been sending us cards throughout the week. But this one has a bigger head, right? And this one has a bigger head, right?
Because he's not sure. He doesn't know. He's not sure anymore. Because none of those cards that he sent had anything to do with this UFC fighter who Eric is just ridiculing and making fun of. And he's like, and your gigantic bobblehead, sir.
And to all of the females out there, to any female viewer, listener, on behalf of Eric, me and Carlos, do apologize for the approach that he may take at times that we have learned recently. So
it's horrifically inappropriate. See, now, before we get into, by the way, Cheetozard won with 63% of the vote, deservedly so, on Cheetozard week, no less. On Cheetozard week. We will get back to covering that topic in a few moments. Cheetozard week will stay on the screen until I'm done covering the Cheetozard topic. I may not be done by Friday. We'll find out. I don't know. I'm not promising anything, but I do thank AMG for supporting the podcast. I do want to read a couple of comments from last week, which includes one that Brandon is making reference to. So first, Dan's Vintage Baseball Card PC said, Eric showing vintage, and I appreciate that he spelled it correctly. Finally, a real episode. I do appreciate that you said vintage, even though I don't know what that is. But I appreciate you spelled the word correctly. Nonetheless, thank you, Dan. Jeff here says, great show, guys. Eric never looked or sounded better than those last 30 minutes. Could not agree more.
Oh, yeah, I disappeared.
That was his best contribution.
Yeah.
Breakers HQ said, good show. Thank you, Breakers. Bob Boozle said, Thoughts on funny cards? Eric probably asks women who aren't pregnant when they are due. Rats jumping into the Cheeto vat. I'd hate to see Topps Chrome's embellishments of zombie cotton cantaloupe head. Zombie cotton's cantaloupe head. So thank you, Bob Boozle. And Eric's response was, all cards are peachy and all women are pregnant.
That was my reference, ladies. I just wanted to
The opinions expressed by that of
on his
Bougie Eric
behalf.
and his multiple concussions are those of himself. And I will read from Bobbles and Ball Cards. The views and expressions of Sanderson de Orr are solely the thoughts and responsibilities of Sanderson de Orr.
Thank you.
And also, to that UFC fighter, he thinks your fucking head's huge. And he thinks he can take you.
I didn't say that. No.
That you should have seen the shit talk that Eric was giving before we hit record. Oh man, he's like, I can beat that guy with one hand tied behind my back. I will slap that gigantic bobblehead man all day
He
long.
was more confident than the guy that parked on his grass.
Woo!
Well, that's
Oh my goodness!
Throwback.
Oh my goodness!
Throwback.
Wow! Wow!
No,
Thank you all for the comments. We appreciate your engagement.
Parks on the other side of the street now.
Look, all I'm saying is that there is a commonality. So we're going to do this week's Silly Card of the Week, also brought to us by AMG. So thank you again for your support. All right. So first one, again, I feel like there's some confusion here, but we're gonna show it anyway. I'm gonna start off with this one, and again, I don't know what Eric's fixation is, but now I'm gonna show you guys. So he's got a card with Dustin Pedroia. He's fielding the position. Everything looks
It's
normal
a
to me.
normal
I don't see
glove.
what the issue is. Yeah, like what's the issue here, Eric?
Dustin's just a really small man.
Are you sure? Are you look? Do you want to fight the UFC guy and Dustin Pedroia? Is that what's happening right now? You want them both to fight you?
Troy, I want no part of the UFC guy. He would kill me. I mean, he would give me 10 more concussions. I want nothing to do with Pedroia. I'm not scared of. I'll stand up to him, but there's no way I'm going anywhere near that UFC fighter. He will kill me.
I feel like you're not being enough of a man of peace on Cheetozard week of all times.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So this will be Eric's submission. We will include all these options in a community post on the channel. We appreciate your votes and we appreciate your engagement. All right. Number 2 here. This is Brandon's contribution. This is Skip Schumacher, a Topps card.
I don't
Squirrel.
think- I don't think that's a baseball player.
Yeah, see, you can see Skip's shoe and his leg, and yeah, rally squirrel.
Rally Squirrel. Indeed.
Yeah.
It doesn't really
I'm
require
sure
much.
nobody ever expected to see a Skip Schumacher on the show being displayed here, but I felt this was appropriate for the segment.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Sometimes I got to work really hard to come up with the title. This one's literally just going to say squirrel. Exclamation point. It's actually very easy. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
That's what we're going to do. It's very easy. Very straightforward. Brandon, I appreciate you making my job easy this week. It
Yeah.
makes it really easy for me this week. So, all right. I'm going to finish off with a personal favorite of mine. The Shockmaster.
Oh, good God.
The classic. My man. The
Poor guy.
Shockmaster.
That poor
My
guy.
favorite part about this is that not only is it the Shockmaster, which already is awesome. I'm already a big fan. I'm loving it.
God.
But it's an autographed Shockmaster as the Shockmaster.
I still feel so bad for that poor guy.
It's so good, Eric. But you don't understand. It's so good. So for those who
Good
are not familiar with
penmanship.
the legend, yes, good penmanship. If for those of you not familiar with the legend of the Shockmaster,
That poor guy.
the all-time great. He was also known by his other monikers, Tugboat and Typhoon. So if you're familiar with WWE back in the day,
I mean,
Tugboat and Typhoon was
Thank
also
you.
the Shockmaster.
And he had a good run as Tugboat. So
And Typhoon, he was a tag team champion as Typhoon.
yeah, no, he had a good run after that, but oh, that poor bastard.
This right here is one of the great moments. So this was a very, and all you got to do, folks, I will see if I can find an example of it. If I can find the appropriate one, I will pull it up because I think WWE themselves has what they call the unforgettable debut of the Shockmaster. And there's multiple layers to this. So it is this gigantic man, because if you remember Tugboat and Typhoon, he is not a slender individual. Let's just put it that way. Or as Eric likes to think of him, as a normal sized belly. Because again, Eric has like visual dysmorphia. He doesn't know like sizes or all things. But the point is, they had him be this character that you're seeing on here with a shiny helmet. The shininess doesn't quite come through, but it was literally a spray painted stormtrooper helmet with glitter. It was silver glitter on a stormtrooper helmet, and that was a shock. But to be clear, even if this had worked, and it didn't work, it was disastrous. But even if this had worked, Brandon, I don't see how they thought this would. He can't wrestle with it on. Like there was no way this was ever going to. This was.
See.
Yeah, this was a failure from the get-go because what happened was he was supposed to go through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man. By the way, why are you having him go through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man? This is a terrible idea. But the way they set up the little thing with the whole plaster and the drywall and everything, the drywall was easy for him to go through. He was supposed to, it was going to be dramatic. It was going to be amazing. The problem is they left one of the beams on the bottom and he tripped over it. The helmet went flying and he had to, on his knees, reach for the helmet and try to put it back on. But then his voice was dubbed. On top of everything else, his voice was his Shockmaster voice was bullshit. It was dubbed. And then if you watch the video, I will, like I said, I'll put it in the description. If you watch the video, you see the other wrestlers try to keep a straight face and fail miserably, most of them. I think Sting was involved in this segment. And I want to say Sting was involved in the segment, maybe Ric Flair, and I think one or two other guys were involved in it. And they're all sitting there staring at this moron who has just tripped over and is reaching for his helmet, and they're trying to take it seriously.
It wasn't Piper's Pit, right? It was, whose show was it?
I think it was, well, I don't remember who it was specifically for that one. I will see if I can find it, but it was unbelievable. It was absolutely classic.
I'm telling you, I don't know if I should say this but all right, I'll say it, but I'll take the heat. The two worst things that I've ever seen in WWE history: the passing of Owen Hart, Shockmaster. The top two.
Two very different reasons.
Owen Hart, introduction to Shockmaster. The two worst things I have ever seen in that company's history.
Okay, so real quick, I just pulled this up from Wikipedia just to refresh myself because I remember it. And he was supposed to debut. So I'll give you a quick, like I said, I gave you a lot of background. The interview segment was actually hosted by Ric Flair. It was part of a Flair for the Gold interview segment. That was what it's supposed to be. It was in front of a live audience, a Clash of Champions. And it was Sting, Davey Boy Smith, and Dustin Rhodes were supposed to be part of his team. And they were supposed to be against the heel team, which was Sid Vicious, Big Van Vader, Kane and Cole and Volbrawl. So they're supposed to be, and Ric Flair is the host of this whole thing. And the person who did the voice was Ole Anderson, who also did a voice for a character that Ric Flair was playing, who's supposed to be taking on Sting. And they had that on there. So that's hysterical. But yeah, basically they're trying to restrain laughter as this whole thing happens. You guys got to watch this clip. I'll play it. But then on here, he's supposed to be speaking with his gravelly voice. That's why it's Ole Anderson who does it. But then on the footage, it's like Ole Anderson who could be heard laughing before speaking because he's watching this and he's supposed to be playing the voice of this character. And you can see this is the image when he's pointing. This is after he had already fallen.
Oh yeah, he
tried to save it, but there was nothing that could be saved here.
No, and I think they killed the character off, didn't they? They didn't.
He hung around for a little bit, but after that, he was dead in the water. Like there was nothing you could do with this. Like he was very much. He hung around a little bit, but not very long.
Even if he came through that wall correctly, it was just a bad character. The guy, it was just bad. Tugboat was better.
Yeah, here we go. So WCW tried to continue with the angle, repackaging the Shockmaster character as a klutz. So they tried to lean into the accident and try to play it. Yeah, but it was dead in the water. There's nowhere you could go with this character. But Eric, it was a legendary moment. I cackled many a times thinking about the old Shockmaster.
I put it on the number 2. Yeah, actually, I'll bump it to 3 because I remember when that other wrestler broke his neck in the ring.
Darren Drozdov?
Yeah, when Droz broke his neck in the ring, I'll give that number 2.
Well, that didn't happen on screen though. Like that wasn't like that was like kind of. I think I don't remember if they did that as a pre-tape or whatever, but they avoided actually showing any of that. So that one never made air.
That's
Well,
The one that I remember made air was Sid Vicious snapped his leg. Like that one was a bad one. That was a real bad injury. He took him out for years.
Here's the important question. Since we're
Vote for
talking all
Shockmaster, by the way. People, vote for Shockmaster. Don't do it for me. Do it for the Shockmaster.
he needs
since
some.
we're talking wrestling here,
Wrestle.
how many and comment down below if you're going to be part of it. It's literally advertised in the email to chase the triple auto of The Rock, Cena, and Travis Scott.
And Travis Scott, yeah.
How many are you ordering, Carlos? Eric, I know you're a big chaser. I know
he's a
you're
big Travis Scott guy. He's a big Travis Scott guy.
I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested, but I'll tell you why.
I'm going to shock everybody. I'm going to be the shock master.
You're gonna be Shockmaster.
I know who The Rock is. I know.
I'm glad.
So, and I know who John Cena is.
Your fellow countryman, yes.
I have no idea who the other person is.
I'm going to tell you, as silly as this sounds, the Travis Scott auto will push that card's value.
No,
it will to an audience, but I'll be honest, Travis Scott actually detracted from that segment. I understand, like from Topps' standpoint, like from Topps' standpoint, you should include him because he's in the shot. So and there is an audience specifically that will chase because he has a lot of fans. As the musician Travis Scott,
everything
he's got
he's
a ton
collabed
of fans.
with has done
he's got a ton
really
of fans.
well.
Yeah, he's a musician.
He sings the songs.
He sings the songs. But the thing is, I didn't understand. So like just to be clear, so we're all on the same page. I don't really watch since WrestleMania 40. I haven't watched 1 second of WWE. I genuinely have no interest in anything involving the current era with Cody Rhodes and a lot of that. I genuinely have no interest. This image that Brandon is referring to is the angle that is supposed to carry them to WrestleMania. They made John Cena a bad guy. They brought him. And then it's gotten all these comparisons to Hulk Hogan turning and joining the NWO. And I'm sitting there like, if you saw Hogan in the NWO, he literally had trash thrown at him. This is nowhere near that level. Get out of here. So please settle down. Yeah, settle down. So this isn't even. By the way, here's another reason it's not the same. Number one, the Hogan thing was, yes, after Hogan had this long run as being, the good guy and everything. But the thing is, at that point in time, it was the perfect thing for his career. Hogan, as hard as this may be to believe, Hogan was 42 years old at that time and still had gas in the tank to be able to do matches and be able to do John Cena is 47 going on 48. He has been a good guy for longer than Hogan's entire run was in WWE. His original run, like when he was at his apex, because he went from 84 till about 91, 92-ish, maybe 93. But the point is, less than 10 years, but he was on top that whole time, like on top. But Cena's run was actually longer as the top guy. He never reached Hogan's apex, but his run was consistent, and it was very long between the beginning to the thing. And he's gone out to Hollywood and done all that. The point is, at this point, Cena's on his last. He's supposed to be on his retirement tour run. I have zero problem with it. It's probably the best thing they could have done to try to make it interesting. The problem is, like, you've got a guy who's on fumes, career-wise. He's at the end. The NWO, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are not there to give legs to it for a couple more years. Like, Cena's not going to be doing this very long now. He's at the tail end. So it's literally a desperate attempt to try to make the WrestleMania thing more interesting.
So he's a bad guy now?
He is now, yes.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. The problem is it's about 10 years late. My opinion is it's about 10 years late because they could have gotten a lot more mileage out of it 10 years ago. They've had multiple opportunities along the way to do it when it would have been much more effective, as opposed to where they're doing it now, where, like, yes, it was shocking because it had been so damn long. They figured at this point they'd given up on it or are never going to do it. So that was the shock factor. But I'm like, guys, it's at the tail end. Like, he's got almost nothing left in terms of the tank of doing. And I could spend half an hour explaining why it makes no sense, but I'm not going to. The point is, it's not as big a deal. However, the card will be a big deal. I agree that the card will be a big deal because The Rock is in it. That's huge. John Cena's in it, which is great. And Travis Scott will bring an audience to that too. So I agree.
Is The Rock a bad guy?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yes. But I think between the three of them, I think there is a decent audience. So to answer Brandon's question, though, I have no interest in it myself. No, thank you. I'm good. But I will not be shocked if a ton of people order it because a lot of people came out of that very excited about it. So I have no doubt it will do very well. The Fanatics Overlords will make good money on that card. I can be very confident in this. So check. So vote for favorite silly card of the week. Remember, the correct answer is Shockmaster. For the love of all that is holy, the correct answer is Shockmaster, y'all. Shockmaster.
That was crazy.
Don't do it for me. Do it for Shockmaster and Cheetozard. On Cheetozard week, no less. May the Cheetozard be with you. Anyway, all right. So we got all that. I wanted to touch on a couple of things. We got a couple of quick hitter topics, but I want to make sure I touch on a few of them here. And then we'll go a couple of quick hitter topics, a couple of collecting kind of points in between, and then we'll see how time goes if we got a little bit of time at the end. Real quick, what I'm going to do, I will bring back Cheetozard week because frankly, it's very exciting for me. But for now, let me bring back the regular overlay for a couple of minutes. First one is actually a video from Simon466 Cards. I wanted to get your guys' respective takes on it. Since we talked about it, actually, you do have two different sides of it. So I'll moderate. I'll kind of be in the middle. He was actually referring to, and I'll include a link in the description to the video. He was talking about an eBay store called Good Time Cards. So we'll pull it up here so we can see it while we're talking about it, and then we'll explain it. So what happened is Good Time Cards here, and I think some of them have sold, but they've actually got a variety of these different cards that have these fancy patches on here. But these cards are all for different brands in terms of National Treasures Collegiate or, Panini Black. They call them the sizable memorabilia or whatever. But they've got these different patch cards that are all from not any specific event, game, or player. So it's one of those kind of Dick's Sporting Goods, kind of, off the rack jersey that you can get anywhere. But the seller has removed the original patch and swapped it out for another generic, not from any event, player, whatever, event kind of thing. So Simon made the thesis. He offered the hot take that he doesn't care about this. And I'll outline the rationale for it, but then I want you guys to give me your take on it. You have two different sides of this conversation. His thesis, his argument was because you're starting off with a not from any real event, whatever, and the seller is disclosing this, and I'll read the description of one of these in a minute. But because he's doing that, he's saying that from that perspective, you're basically trading trash for trash. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively you're taking, a nonsense patch and swapping it out with a nicer looking nonsense patch versus the other side of the equation. The other argument that's made on the other side, though, just to cover both ends of that, is that while this seller may be disclosing that and the buyer may be fully aware because they are disclosing it, what about folks down the road? So that's one possible issue. So let me start with you, Eric, and then I'll let Brandon kind of finish off. So I gave you a couple of quick examples, a couple of quick high-level arguments, pro and con. So, Eric, what are your thoughts on this?
All right. Well, it starts off, if you purchase a card, you have the right to do whatever you want to it. It's yours. You can cut it in half, throw it through a paper shredder, switch the patches out, spray paint it. It's yours. You can do whatever you want. Now, one of the things that I don't see here, but you told me that it is clearly listed that he has switched the patches out. Okay.
Yep, right here. Just so we're all on the same page, I will show it on the screen here. So this is the description of the Jalen Hurts that I just showed you. So it says either an authentic NFL shield or high quality embroidered patch has been added. These cards will not grade.
So I would like to see it very, a little more clear. In the item description, I took the old patch out and added a new, more decorative patch, blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to see that. I have no problem with them doing that. It's trash anyway. You're switching trash for better trash. So this is now art. We have people doing this stuff all the time. Okay. People make custom cards all the time. I own a couple. There's one right here. This Bobby Orza 1-of-1 custom card. Okay. So I have no problem with it. Now, how do you protect the next guy who buys it? I think what you need to do is that this artist that is doing this needs to do something to the back of the card, like sign it or write the email address, website, something that someone can go to see this. And maybe there should be before and after pictures on that website. If the guy's doing this as a business to make money, he should do it right. And transparency is the only way to do it right. But I have no problem taking a piece of trash out, putting something, a nicer piece of trash in, make it a one-of-one artistic piece, write one of one in blue Sharpie on the back or something, like I said, and like the website or whatever, and off you go. I also think he's charging too much money for it also. And I don't like, after you showed me that, I don't think he's being descriptive enough. I think, number one, in our rules, people are stupid, and people are going to press that buy it now button way too quickly. And I think it needs to be in the title altered, in big, giant capital letters, altered, and make it clear, because it's all about transparency doing this. I have no problem with them doing this. It needs to be completely transparent. And the cards look absolutely fantastic. For the right amount of money, I may, especially if it was like, say, a Reggie Lemlin card or something, that someone took, a trashy patch out and put in something really nice and charged an appropriate amount of money. I wouldn't mind that in my collection, as long as it was made clear to me what it was and I wasn't overcharged believing that it was something else.
Sure. Okay, that's fair. So, Brandon, you want to kind of give the other side of it, because I think you had a different take based on it.
So I'm gonna go about it. First of all, I don't like the way he's approaching it.
Sure.
And I'll touch on some things that Eric said later. But there's a couple things direct.
You keep my name out of your mouth.
I'm gonna put my name right in my mouth and spit it right back out. Anyway, I don't like it for a couple reasons. A, it's deceptive, because even if you read past where he puts like the authentic NFL shield or whatever, that's, I don't want to be critical, but you see so many crazy posts of people that have absolutely no damn clue about what's going on in the hobby. There's going to be like, you're going to have a majority that understand of what that means, but then there's going to be the people that don't, and they're going to buy it. And he's taking.
So just for the record, I'm going to take the under. I think the minority understand what's going on. I actually don't. I actually think the majority have no clue what's going on. Yeah.
But then to follow that up, he said that's a one. He said they're $1,000 to $10,000 cards, I think is what it said. I'm sorry, it's a Panini Collegiate non-autoed patch card. Nobody's paying $1,000 to $10,000 for them. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's also.
Do you agree with Eric's point though that maybe an additional step should have been to stamp the card in some way that can't be removed?
So that's where I was, like, the path I was leading to. Sure. I actually like some of the people, like Card Killer and a couple other people that do custom artwork of the cards.
Sure.
But they mark them. It's not deceptive that they have changed the card. This person is literally trying to keep this as close to original by just doing what has been done. Now, I want to preface, this has been done for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Probably since early days of patches coming out, so 30 plus years likely, or at least 30 years, I guess not 30 plus, but patch swapping has been a thing. If people can put back in the early days of patches, it was a big thing to have a 2-color or a 3-color. Like, even if it was the littlest spot of a third color, you would notate that in your eBay listing and you would get more money. So it's been a thing for years of people patch swapping. Unfortunately, we've seen it in hockey. There was Jason Robertson's, and I'm not pumping him here. I'm just making a mention because I remember there was an alert. Hey, some of these patches on these cards have been swapped. So it's common to happen now. These cards he's buying, I'm gonna be honest with you. He's probably picking them cards up for $3 to $5 at max. And then if we're gonna shit on Panini for throwing Dick's Sporting Goods patches in there, he's probably not even going that far. He's probably buying Chinese knockoff collegiate just patches, not even the cards or the jerseys, and then placing them in the card and then trying to sell them for $120. Like, you gotta respect the
Scandalous.
hustle.
Scandalous.
But he is one. I don't care what he has in his description. He is 1,000,000% being deceptive, and people are going to get screwed. It's not about the initial sale. You can say he's trying to do it correctly, but it's going to get passed along the $1,000 to $10,000 price mark. If people want a nice card like that, I'm all for it. But I would agree with Eric. It needs to be marked. Not just in your damn description of your listing. Mark the card. Make that your artwork. If you want to have a hustle, if you want to make a little bit extra coin, if you want to be creative and take the time to put a nicer patch in there, so be it. But just mark the damn card in some way. That's all you got to do. But that's not going to let him get the prices he's getting for the people that are oblivious to what he's doing and thinking they're getting a really nice card.
There you go. Sounds good. So specifically, I wanted to let the guys talk out those portions of it. Obviously, if those of you have some opinions on it, include them in the comment section. Give your take. Let us know where you stand on it, one way or the other. A couple of different things were presented on it. Doesn't require a lot more explanation, so I think you get the gist of it. I'll include a link to Simon's video if you want to hear his thesis, kind of his take on it. I gave you a quick high level, but if you want to check out the video, you can get a little more information on it from his perspective. So we want to go into that. All right, real quick. Now, I'm going to spend a couple moments talking about this because, as I said, and I've already alluded to through the variety of this show, Cheetozard Week. Magnificent, glorious. So I'm not saying it's going to come up on Friday. It's totally going to come up on Friday. It could not possibly not more come up on Friday. But I will say we were discussing the Cheetozard auction. We were discussing the possibilities. We were discussing what could happen and everything. And we even came up with, at the very end, this was right at the tail end of the live stream. That's the clip that I used in my video on it. We were even trying to speculate on the possibilities, what the final total could be, all that good stuff. But I got to tell you, I look, I'm gonna read it out. I'm gonna show it, but at the same time, I want to get some thoughts and opinions on it because it's so good. So the end result was that the auction went off, and there was a brand new record price for, I guess, a Cheeto. I don't know what category.
You have a I mean, this has been done before.
Listen, foodstuffs have definitely been sold. Look, there was like a sandwich that had like the Virgin Mary on it, or a potato chip that had a Jesus on it. They pale in comparison to the Cheetozard.
It didn't break the banana.
Well, listen, banana's another category. Like, it's a banana. We're talking about. Look, it has duct tape. The banana has duct tape. All right, you're getting twofer. You're getting a twofer. So for the Cheetozard here, $87,840. That was $72,000 plus. By the way, I kept quoting 20%. Goldin is actually 22%. The juice is now 22%. I didn't realize it was 22. Inflation, I guess. Yeah. So anyway, so the important thing is the final sale was $87,840. And if this wasn't enough, you can see there everything on there. You know who's one of the responders on here? Cheetos. You see the eye emoji? Cheetos, the official Cheetos, has responded with eye emojis, the look over emoji. That's legit, Eric.
Did they buy it?
Dangerously cheesy, Eric. Dangerously cheesy.
You got to wonder if Cheetos bought it.
Listen, we may be in the look. Clearly, if they bought it, that means they got some cash. I already said I'll sell out the Fanatics Overlords, but we might sell out to Big Cheeto.
Oh, I'll sell out to anybody who's got the cash. I don't care.
I'm just throwing it out there. So first of all,
the price and all that is we can get into that, but I gotta ask a question right off the bat because I just have a feeling it is going to happen. Which slab is it going into?
BGS. Totally BGS. You got to do it. Come on. I think it's the right thing. Look, only BGS.
I don't know how thick it is. I don't know how thick the custom is, but
Brandon, it doesn't matter. BGS will have a holder the size of a house. If that's what it takes, then God damn it, they will have one the size of the house. All right, they've got a BGS holder that can hold the house that will hold the Cheetozard.
Oh my god.
So Eric, I want to know on Cheetozard week, the holiest of weeks.
Yes.
I want to know how you feel about this sale, given that Cheetozard sold for more than it would cost you to buy a Bitcoin. At the time of recording right now, a Bitcoin is $83,644. That still leaves you $4,000 shy of the Cheetozard.
I'm kind of just ashamed of humanity at the moment.
Only now?
No, I mean, I've been ashamed for a while, but this is something else. You know, this is something else. The only thing that makes any sense is if Cheetos purchased this. I don't know who they were bidding against. But if Cheetos purchased this to somehow market it, and I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. You know, I understand that there's billionaires out there who love to collect things, and they, you know, I think you quoted it in your video. You know, 87,000 could be like $87 to them.
Yep.
And or $8.75 to them. Who knows? Depends on how much money you have. And it was funny, and they were like, "What the hell?" I can't wrap my head around it as an average person with average finances. I can't wrap my head around it.
Let's put into perspective on the pedestal that we need to put the Cheetozard. Okay, Eric?
Well, of
It's
course.
important.
I'm going to put this in terms of booby ores.
Oh,
ooh, I like it.
The holiest of all. We're going booby ore versus Cheetozard. And then I'm going to go even more superiority. We're going the almighty KSA booby ore.
Whoa, dang.
Okay? You following me, right? I know this is getting deep. But what if I told you that you could own 5, not 1, not 2, but 5 KSA 9, pretty pristine up there, of the booby ore rookies, and still have about $7,000 to buy some leaf lemolins? What would you say to that?
I'd vomit in my hat.
Cheetozard week. Brandon, you got my answer. Cheetozard week. That's all I got to say. Did I mention there's a Cheetozard week overlay? All right? That's all you need to know. Listen,
5,
you're both
Eric,
wrong.
and
You're
still
both
get
wrong.
your lemolins.
Look, let me be clear about this. As the host of this show, I am pulling rank. You're all wrong. Bobby's wrong. Everyone's wrong. This is the high watermark of the hobby. There will never be a greater card in the history of this hobby. All other cards are trash by comparison. Honus Wagner, trash. 52 Tops Mantle, trash. Booby Ores, garbage. Garbage.
I'm just gonna
Not even regular.
Right.
Hey,
You
know what's funny?
You should shred that garbage. Shred that trash.
We gotta pause. Time out.
Right away.
We were just talking about these patches being swapped and how they were custom cards, right? This is literally a fucking custom card that just sold for $87,000. So
That's what I'm
maybe
saying.
this guy is brilliant if he would just say, "Hey, it's a custom."
Hashtag
Maybe he would
bargain.
value it up.
Hashtag bargain.
And I said
We've
in
learned a
my
lot.
statement about the custom cards, he was charging too much. So I still think
Including, again, you were wrong. Including, again, you were wrong.
I'm wrong.
You could not have been more wrong if you tried.
I hate being so wrong all the time.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Truly. But nonetheless, on Cheetozard week, I for one am proud that we have been able to see the sale of yet another wonderful grail. And blessed be that Cheetozard. Blessed be. All right, moving on. So I'll switch the overlay. That overlay makes me so happy. You'll see it one more time before the show's over.
But AMG,
Anyway, thank you to AMG, as always. All right, so real quick, let me go in here. We've got a little mini update on the Whatnot video on demand. And actually, Graded Gamer, so friend of the channel, Amanda, has posted this, including some screenshots. So I'll read it to you because I think this will be kind of interesting. Again, we'll wait for more information. But for now, given that she took some screenshots of it, presumably from the seller's Discord, so I'll give you some information on it. It looks like that some information has been put across. I want to see what happens with it, though. I will give it to you for now as a speculation piece, but she did post it with some screenshots. I'll also leave you a link to it so you can check it out for yourself more closely, but I'll just give you a high level just so that we can look at it together. All right, so here it is. And let me quickly click on this. There we go. Okay, so I'll read you. So this was relating to the VOD update. So I'll summarize quickly. It says, today Whatnot's product team shared an update in the seller Discord. So this is where the screenshots should be coming from, confirming that the broader VOD access will be restored in the coming days. It's important step in maintaining an open, engaging marketplace. I'll give my opinion here in a second, but first I'll read. So next slide here. Screenshot at the top, and then I'll read what it's written here. In early December, our engineering team identified a need to improve the stability, reliability, and performance of video system due to past recordings and were causing slow loading times and poor performance. Customers have continued to have access to the video receipts for their purchases. We talked about that briefly. However, the product team will be restoring larger access to VODs to buyers in the coming days. We will continue to explore additional features and recordings in the coming months that will improve overall buying experience. So that's presumably from this Craig here. And next slide here. Buyers in the show will have access to the whole recording of the show for 60 days. This is consistent with the prior implementation. Buyers will also have access to the next 3 days of live show recordings from the seller to cover instances where the product is open or fulfilled on live on subsequent days. Which you see there, and that's kind of Amanda's logo there. So again, I'll give you a link to this. And Amanda does a lot of stuff on Whatnot, so everything. So I'm going to take it at face value, but I want to give a quick opinion, and I want to get your guys' take. Here's my thing. I don't buy that explanation at all, and I'll tell you why. While it may be true that video can cause performance issues, it can cause space issues, that's all true. That's 100% true. But given that you're a platform that does live video, you should know that, number one. Number two, your marketing budget was substantial because I remember, hey, I've got $50,000 to spend on these cards at this card show, sponsored by Whatnot. So you have clearly enough money in the marketing budget, which should work for server space and capacity if you need it. If you need money for capacity and server space and you have money in the marketing budget, I'm just saying you might have a couple of bucks to throw around. But most importantly, number three, again, I'll take it at face value, and I'm just reporting what Amanda's including here, which she's just reporting. She's just taking the quotes and reporting it, so that's fine. But again, as seems to be the case with Whatnot, by the way, we could spend the rest of the show talking about additional issues that have come up with Whatnot, additional things that have been showcased, examples that have come into light of one issue after another issue after another issue, where people have pulled video of sellers doing unscrupulous things, which transparency being an issue. The point is, this came right on the heels of the backyard break thing. Even if this was a problem and you're internally, I'm just throwing this out there, Brandon and Eric. If I'm sitting there at the management position, even if this is the rationale, this is actually the reason that you're doing it, I probably would have waited. I would have at least held back a little bit longer. I wouldn't have pulled the plug on video on demand replays right after you just had a high profile issue that was captured on video. The timing is not good. The optics of the timing are not good. That's where you got to sit there and think about this and go, we might have had a good reason to do this. We might need to hold off. Thoughts?
Go ahead.
I was going to say all of that. So I'll just reiterate quickly by saying timing is everything. This is a PR nightmare for them. They have dropped the ball every second that has come after the incident that we all know about. This is now damage control, and they can all go screw.
There you go. Succinctly to the point. Brandon, your thoughts?
I'm going to say go back to the, since we're talking, videos and all of that, let's go back to some black and white days and a show that some folks may remember called The Three Stooges, because I'm pretty sure that is their PR team right now and decision-making team. Because it's like you have something happen, and then you make a stupid move that kicks you in the nuts. And then you're like, oh, well, let's stand back up and make another stupid move so we get hit in the head with the bucket or the board or whatever. Like Carlos said, if this is got any factual reason behind it, they are so blindly oblivious to how it looks to the public eye of those that are aware of issues that have recently taken place.
Mhm.
When the whole backyard breaks thing came about, and then just the lack of any like haste to do anything to punish based on your own, your own policies, take action on your own policy. It was very slow coming, and it was very muddy onto what actually was taking place. We had to find through other sources, and then they say, well, we don't disclose that publicly. Okay, you don't have to come right out and tell us what the hell you're doing direct with those people, but at least acknowledge, hey, we are aware of the situation and we are taking, we are handling it, right? You don't have to tell us what you're doing, but tell us that, hey, we are aware of it and we're proceeding, taking action. All right. That's first of all. But then to go in shortly after and be like, oh, well, we got to change up how we're doing these videos. And then the backlash that came from that, because how many videos were made talking about how stupid of a decision this is, to now, oh, well, we're going to put them back in place here in a couple of days. There was an issue, but we think we got it. No, that you are like trying to damage control because y'all don't know what the hell to do right now. And they're like taking that shovel and just continuously digging the hole deeper and deeper. And you're right. They have a shitload of money. I don't remember what the financial numbers were, but I had literally pulled it up and quoted it, and it was pretty substantial, the growth they've had. They're not a tiny platform. They have grown a lot year over year. They have money to spare. What they don't have is very good decision-making skills, because they look like an absolute circus right now.
Yeah. So just to give credence to what you're talking about, I'll see if I can find a couple of I have an article on TechCrunch, but I think I've seen it in a few other spots, so I'll give quickly a high level thing here. Whatnot as a startup can obviously go for different funding rounds. So if you're not familiar with venture capital and the way that works, the important thing you need to know is it's basically looking for rounds of investment. Okay? Just think about it that way. High level, that's all we're talking about. Now, what you're going to do with that is you're going to base it on your valuation. Whatever you decide based on the numbers that you put together, you have to convince people that you can't just make up the valuation. Now, this podcast, for example, is worth $12 trillion. So the problem is then in order to get the venture funding round, I then have to convince other people. So then they can buy a share of it for whatever percentage. So again, just simple concept. But at the beginning of the year, so this is January 2025, so not long ago, at the beginning of the year, so they actually announced that they had secured what they call Series E funding rounds, so Series E, and based on a valuation of almost $5 billion, so they were able to convince the funding round that they have a valuation of $5 billion. And based on that, for this specific funding round, they were able to secure $265 million. So, needless to say, they have enough money to pay for a little bit of video bandwidth and possibly to sponsor us. I'm just saying.
And that's just the valuation and the funding round. You don't have to go look it up, but I want to say like from 2023 profiting to 2024, it was like 104% growth or something like that. It was something substantial.
Yeah. The point is
it
they
was
raised a lot of
large
money.
number.
Yeah. You were able to basically generate $265 million. That's the best way I can put it, which means that you have the funding. You know what? You have the funding not only to get a little bit of server space, you also have the funding to be able to hire a PR team to actually explain this properly. And you have the ability to hire some people to police your own policies on your own platform. You can at least hire a guy. You can get one and have a couple bucks left to spare, I think.
Did you see the video? And excuse me, I it's not coming to my brain due to concussions.
Is it the Rhino Pokemon thing?
Yes.
I did. Yeah, the one you had accept. Look, so Eric, remember I said a couple minutes ago, we could spend the rest of the show just talking about stuff that has come up on Whatnot, even recently.
I go back to just saying, screw them guys.
Yeah. So bottom line, I just don't want to spend too much time on it because again, this is very straightforward. The point is,
Screw them
I
guys.
understand the messaging that was given. And by the way, I want to thank Amanda for posting that information. So I appreciate that she posted that information and we'll take it as is given. We'll leave it be.
Listen, you better. You're making a little bit of a mistake, and you better fix it, or we're going to lose Amanda. You're not announcing her title.
I'm leaving that to you. That is literally your job.
Amanda is the official non-sports correspondent to the Because I'm Carlos show. And if you don't say all that, we're going against the contract, and we're going to
Eric,
get.
what do I charge you on an invoice for then? This is your job.
All right. Okay.
This is literally your job.
If we don't do the whole title at least once, she gets upset.
Do it.
So I was curious. As of May of 2024, Whatnot, it says has approximately 797 employees. So I based on, let's say those 797 employees make $150,000 a year. They could pay all of those employees on $119,550,000. So about half of what the funding round was, and still have a lot of money left over to upgrade the system a bit.
Yeah. So my point is, you're a video streaming platform. My expectation, especially since you can generate funding if you need it for different scalability part of it. Again, I'm going to take the information that Amanda provided at face value. And again, I appreciate that she posted it with the screenshots and everything. I'll leave a link in the description for people if they want to check it out a little more closely. I did read it off. But the important thing is, that doesn't change the fact that I don't believe their rationale given. I don't believe you. But I acknowledge that that's what was written down. Again, but I reserve the right not to believe you. Because right now, Whatnot has not given me a reason to believe things they say. Is that fair? Is that succinct to the point? Is that
absolutely?
It's a bunch of whatnot.
No.
Yeah. So that's so we'll accept the words, and I read the words, but I am willing to reserve my right to not believe you. So that's where I stand on this issue at this point in time.
I got nothing for him, and they had the 200 and something $1 million. Well, I've done my research, and ever since I deleted their app live on our show, their market value has gone down 200 million. So they only have like 43 million left, because as soon as I hit delete on live on air, they lost like 200 million.
Well, it said they had 359 million, and it was right here on this over here what I was talking about earlier. 359 million in revenue in 2024, growing 102% year over year.
Sure.
So their revenue grew 102%, and just without the funding levels, just the revenue alone was $359 million.
Yeah. And the irony of all this, and again, this isn't me just picking on Whatnot for the sake of picking on Whatnot. I'm saying, as someone who has tried to use this platform, I find it to be extremely clunky. So the irony is, like, they've generated all this money, they've got all these things, and they're trying to resolve for this stuff, but at the same time, they're getting venture capital funding, they're funding rounds, they're able to get that. But then again, the experience is still terrible. Like, to me, again, I'm speaking merely from my experience trying to navigate this application. It's not a great experience from my perspective, and clearly there is no vetting on sellers. There's no vetting on things even after they're reported. Customer service seems to be lacking in some of these cases, again, based on multiple examples that have been noted now, and it seems like all the time we're getting more examples. So it's not a good run. Let's just put it. Let's be nice and say that it has not been a good run for the people of Whatnot currently. They're not on a good streak. So good luck to them, I guess. But maybe you throw money at the problem. But right now, their public relations it may be something I would consider maybe throwing a couple of dollars towards, because you're not doing a great job getting your message out. It should not be anyone else. You should not be screenshots. It shouldn't be third party, borrow it from here. I have no reason not to believe those screenshots, but at the same time, it should be coming from you. You're the one who needs to be releasing this information. If that's the truth and that's the thing you want to get out there, you're the one who should be sending it out. That's just my take.
Yeah, you got to restore. I don't know if you want to call it customer or just audience or what, but you got to restore the public faith in that you're trying to do the right thing, because right now it looks like a complete shit show.
Yep. And that's just from the outside looking in, but you've done nothing to dissuade us. You've done nothing to convince us otherwise. So for now, that's kind of where it stands. Yep. All right. So real quick, I won't call this a better story, but in a way it's kind of a fun one. Not necessarily for us or for the person involved, but maybe for us a little bit. All right. I'm going to talk about the IG deal gone wrong. So this one, oh yes. But you know what the best part about it is? It's a Venn diagram. So when I saw this person's Instagram, Eric, I realized that we got to cover the story because it's a Venn diagram of this podcast. You don't understand. So I'll give you the story, but then I'm also going to show you the Instagram. I'm going to show you why it's a Venn diagram of this podcast and why we are duty bound to talk about it. You said duty bound.
You said
duty.
Listen, this is too important, Eric. Eric, this is too important. Oh. It involves your personal hero and God, Thomas Edward Patrick Beavis Butthead Brady. Your hero in life.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. It involves him. This is important.
Yeah.
So the posts come from, the original posts here, they come from the Real 27 guy, did a video talking about this, but the Instagram itself is diamond_card_collector. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can check it out there. But they tried to do a deal for a Tom Brady 1-of-1. Now, there is a whole thread here. I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from this thread because it is, chef's kiss glorious. And the important thing. So I want to make sure, Eric, I jotted down notes. I need to make sure I get these details right. This is important. This is important. All right. So this deal was a $650,000 deal. That's like 8 Cheetozards. All right. Yeah. We're talking big money here.
That is
big money. All right. So what happened was this person had been doing business with somebody else on previous deals. So this is some additional context, Brandon. So just from the Instagram video.
We've kind of heard that before, but go ahead.
No, I understand. But they had done deals with this other person to the tune of 6 figures previously. So done some deals with them previously through a middleman. And they were told that they might be able to have access to this 1-of-1 Tom Brady card. And when you see this person's Instagram, you'll understand why this is even a thing that could possibly happen. But doesn't change the fact that we'll have some critiques in a minute, but hang tight. So based on the overall, so what happened was the deal was supposed to be that they were going to forward half the money, so $325,000, and then they would receive the item and then presumably send the other half. Now, we'll get into some criticisms I have of this entire arrangement in a minute, but I want to give the details.
That's dumb, but okay.
Yeah, we're going to get to all that, Eric. It gets better. It gets better. So the point is, as soon as this happened, number one, the package arrives and there's nothing in the package. There was communication lapses, and then you'll see the thread because you see there's 2 more images I'm going to share in a minute. But then based on the review of the images, some people looked at it and they thought that the image itself had been docked. So the original image that was used as the basis for arranging this deal looked like the image was doctored. So they ended up sending the $325,000 before realizing that alleged fraud. Now, this is already pretty good. And as you can see, the person is pictured at the top there with, Eric's personal hero. But then we get to the text message thread. All right. I got to read you a little bit of this because it's just too good. Remember, this is for a $650,000 deal. Okay.
That's like my house.
So they're talking to each other here. And it said, okay, so I'll read you a little bit. I'll zip through it a little bit quickly here. So
and
it
of
says,
course
okay,
it's Steve.
It's always about Steve. So, okay, Steve, well, he told me he called you, sent a text message, and you didn't answer. Do what you got to do, then hopefully FedEx will pay out the claim and I can get you back the money. No matter how much I despise the fact you're blaming for this. Again, grammar and punctuation doesn't seem... Look, apparently I'm near $500,000 deal and we cannot spell check. We cannot grammar check. We can't do any of that.
No, it's bad.
The insurance money will go to you and the seller will get whatever out of it and will be given to the seller. Don't ever talk to me again. Don't worry, I won't. But until then, 2 exclamation points. He will respond. I've got nothing to say to him. That's a fake person that called me from a number from Mexico. It just gets hilarious. You all send me fake photos. It's like, fuck you, Steve. I'm done with you. it just goes back and forth. It's hilarious. So here we go. Underneath, you can still mitigate your repercussions. I appreciate you can mitigate repercussions. I like that. No, I tried to facilitate a deal. Jorge was sent the money. Again, $650,000 deal, just so we're clear. So actually, I had it out of sequence. So this was the thing. So my name is Jorge. I'm the seller of the card 2012 Prague Prism. It seems to have gone missing or stolen. And then from there, it gets all over the place, back and forth, phone calls and all that. And then it degrades into a screaming match and all that. Okay. So Eric, there's two lessons here. There's the obvious lesson, and then there's a secondary lesson that I want to convey. First of all, on a $650,000 deal, may I pose a question? Would you not think it would make sense at that price point, at that level, maybe you just go and pick it up yourself?
That would be the first thing I would do. If I have that kind of money, I can afford a plane ticket and a hotel.
Yes. That's an initial thought. That's like my first high level thought on this.
I might be able to even hire at least one security guard.
Yeah. Look, if we're talking about, like, jokes aside, if we're talking about that kind of money, you would have security, you would have you would go and fly it in, you would collect it maybe in neutral ground. Yep. At something like a bank or some kind of a secured facility already that has its own security, but then in addition, you've got your own. And that should be for both parties, because money is changing hands and a valuable item is changing hands. It's for your security and for mine, so that we're both more comfortable. Deals like that do happen, though. Like, people do buy these gigantic high ticket cards. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, no, I want it in hand. I want it either hand delivered or I go and pick it up, or whatever the case may be. Like that. And then you can have insurance both ways on the, taking it back and forth and all that. That is standard operating procedure for a lot of these things, especially private deals, when you're doing some kind of a private deal that doesn't have the background on a platform. Now, so that's the first thing. Again, going down into, misspelled back and forth, and the whole thing was very amusing. Not gonna lie, it was very entertaining. But my favorite part about this, Eric, and this is why I said it's a Venn diagram. Okay, so here's their Instagram page. Those are all Tom Brady 1-of-1s. Here's some Patrick Mahomes 1-of-1s. So the buyer here, by the way, it's a Venn diagram because you've got Eric's personal hero. Oh, yeah. And you got some wrestling. There's a little bit for me. We got some wrestling there. Look, a Tom Brady shield card. Yeah. You got a Roman Reigns 1-of-1. You got a Peyton Manning 1-of-1. Yeah. You got another Peyton Manning here. You got a Superfractor Roman Reigns. We keep going. You got a Mike Tyson card here. You got another Roman Reigns 1-of-1. Are you sensing a pattern here? A bunch of these are 1-of-1s. By the way, that's a CM Punk PMG Gold PMG 1-of-1. There's another one. There's some AEW on top of everything else. There's another one there on top of the wrestling. You got Hulk Hogan 1-of-1, The Rock 1-of-1. So you're sensing a bit of a pattern there, Eric?
He seems to have a lot of 1-of-1s.
A lot of 1-of-1s. And on top of everything else, look. Wacko for Flacco.
It's not a 1-of-1, though. I want to point out that is not a 1-of-1.
It is not, but it's a pretty
those are out of 10.
But it's a pretty fancy Wacko for Flacco, though.
You have the other 9.
It's pretty fancy, though. You got to admit. But I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. So, Eric, a Venn diagram of this podcast. Like, I saw elements of all our our collectings and our fandoms, and the whole thing.
I have a question real quick.
Only one?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a fun one, and if he listens, he may or may not appreciate it. But recently, Paul, friend of the channel, Paul Velbloom, I think it's a boom, no L at the end.
Hey.
He was complaining about, I believe it was around $70 card. Someone sent him in a padded envelope with no sleeve on the slab, no cardboard or anything. How about a $650 or $650,000 card just being sent in a bubble mailer with no cardboard? Now, it did appear that it was in maybe a cardboard box around it too, but I thought just for Paul and the big bubble mailer with no protection, there you go. 650,000.
And again, you're trusting this to get to you through FedEx, the mail, UPS, whatever you chose. When I send out Christmas cards to people every year and people report not getting them. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't understand how, and I've said this for years with grading services. I am not putting my Gretzky rookie in the mail and expect that I'm ever going to see it again. How in the world do you put a 600 something $1,000 card just, through FedEx? This situation is my lawyer will contact your lawyer and they'll work out the details. And then you don't have to worry. We'll have security this, security that, proper, pickup and transition of money, and all of that will get worked out. Because if I can afford a 600 and something $1,000 card, I can afford a lawyer to work it all out for me.
Yeah. So real quick, and I don't disagree, but I want to make a point here. So the first point was what we just talked about the taking the precautions and all this. And I understand there was a middleman who had done business before on some big cards. But if you know, throughout the course of this conversation, I've been showing cards. These are all from his Instagram. One of ones all over the place. Here is a Patrick Mahomes Contenders Optic Gold Vinyl 1-of-1. That's at least a couple of bucks. That might be like half a Cheetozard. I'm just saying, maybe a couple of bucks. And I've been one of the cards I showed a moment ago was a Vince McMahon autograph 1-of-1 from Transcendent. Vince McMahon doesn't sign much of anything, and Transcendent is the highest tier thing that Topps ever produced in their original run with WWE. That card is a pricey one. Stone Cold Steve Austin 1-of-1 from Transcendent. By the way, if you know what that Transcendent box was like 20 grand, 30 grand, or whatever it was, just the box and what was in it and the stuff you could pull out of it. It was obscene.
I don't understand how that is a thing, but that's just me.
James Earl Jones Star Wars Chrome Perspectives. James Earl Jones autograph with the Darth Vader 1-of-1. So this person obviously has at least a couple of bucks to throw around in terms of their collection.
Or they're taking pictures of other people's cards and posting them on their website, on their Instagram, right?
I think given the background of the individual that we have here, I'm not terribly concerned about it in this case.
Okay.
But the point is that when it comes to all this, the point that comes across in this is it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many 1-of-1s you have or how fancy a collection you put together. Clearly, common sense doesn't seem to translate over. It's proof positive that it doesn't seem to matter at this point.
That part is the obvious part. I don't know.
I'm just reiterating. Brandon, I'm reiterating it though, because a lot of people associate you put together a nice collection with, oh, you must be savvy in the hobby. Well, clearly not.
Well, here's my whole thing for this. There's a lot of stuff. Eric mentioned a house. There's a lot of stuff that is on a level of $650,000. A house, a luxury, supercar or something like that. Some of those are 500,000 plus. How many times are you just buying it without taking a look at the home or having someone go take a look at the home? They said that the one guy was facilitating the deal. Well, why didn't you say, hey, Steve, I'll give you half the money. Go pick the card up. Bring it back over here to me. Once I have it and I see it and I verify, I'll give you the other half to take down there, right? It's a middleman. It's someone facilitating the deal, not DMing him. Hey, man, I might know who has this. If you want to buy it, wire him this amount of money. We'll get it to you FedEx, and then you can send him the rest when you got it. Like, who in the hell even thinks of that? Like, $60,000, I don't think that's too smart. Let alone 600,000. But I want to take it a step further.
Go ahead.
Because the best part of this whole thing, I think, that's overlooked is the conversation. Because if somebody has $300,000 of mine and I get a FedEx package with a empty one touch in it, I'm probably going to be calling the authorities.
I'm calling the FBI. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, especially it's international because they said that it was like a Mexican number. The money got wired to a foreign bank account. Like, this isn't small potatoes anymore. This isn't $40 on an eBay per transaction. This is a shitload of money that was shipped Federal Express, presumably across country, internationally here. Did customs open it? Did they like, oh, look at this, like what the hell happened here? And then you're just gonna sit back, fuck off, you messed up, like kids on a text thread? Hell no, you're on the phone calling somebody like, yo, this is what happens. I need to follow a report. We need to get some investigation because that's a lot of money.
Can we go back to?
But no,
okay, since you brought this up,
you fucking
since you brought this up, no, buffoon. It's important that we get this right. It says you fucking buffoon.
You're a buffoon.
A buffoon. By the way,
you're
Eric,
a fucking moron. Jorge was sent the money.
Listen, the important thing is fuck you, Steve. I'm done with you, and you fucking buffoon. Eric, my takeaway here is you fucking buffoon. I want this to be on a shirt. Yeah. I need this. It's $650,000. Oh my goodness.
That's the important part here. And we're laughing at this because sadly,
because we're buffoons.
This shows that it shows the level of extremes. Like we see this happen on smaller deals. We see people doing, shady shit on lower levels of stuff. And now we're witnessing that, yeah, this happens on the upper deals too. Like the lack of sense used amongst a lot of individuals in the hobby. And guess what? I wouldn't be surprised if this dude doesn't want to blame eBay too. eBay sucks. eBay sucks, right? It's always eBay's fault or somebody else's fault. It's not their own. Using common sense, covering your own ass. Like seriously.
So like I said, part of the main reason that I find it so entertaining, I find it far so, is that the text message. Well, I shouldn't say. I think it's text message. The text message side of the thread or the Instagram part of the thread or whatever, it almost goes into parody. Like if you were gonna make a comedy skit, this is almost basically what you type out. Like it's silly the degree to which it got to. The reason why it's funny is because for that dollar amount of money, we already talked about precautions and things that normal people would take. Mind you, normal people don't have $650K to drop on a piece of cardboard. However, other side of the equation, from what we touched on earlier, I don't want to forget this piece. When people started looking at the image, it looked like the image had been doctored. So imagine for a moment that you see this image. Wouldn't one of your first thoughts be, hey, that's a Grail level card. I'm obviously a collector of Brady and all this stuff. Wouldn't I want Eric to do a little diligence though? Like before I extend the money and because I'm doing this through kind of a private deal, I don't have the normal assurances of an auction house or somebody that's already taken it in hand and presumably looked at it and done that portion. Because if something goes wrong, Kenny's a lot of things. But if something goes wrong, then that item, you can hold Kenny accountable because he's the middleman. So you can throw him there in the middle of the conversation to deal with it and presumably stop it from one end of the conversation to the other.
Well, following the story, he had sent half the money already, and then it said he got worried because the guy took a while to ship the card out. And then the doctored photo came up when he took a picture of it with the FedEx bubble mailer, I guess, saying, hey, I'm getting ready to ship this out. The weird part, okay, all right, let's say that is a doctored photo, that card in that image was fake. Why in the hell did the fake card not even show up?
So I get that, but what I'm getting at is, and maybe this is me, I want a couple of photos of the item first. I want to evaluate it carefully.
Definitely.
So I'm taking I want to give it a good, Eric, it's worthwhile me taking a good look at it, is my point. First, step one, I want to take a real good look at it. Step two, talking about what we already talked about earlier, I want either myself or someone on my behalf to collect it for no other reason. Security, yes. But here's another one. How about to make sure that what I'm getting is what I saw? So first, I want to see the images. I want to see, a couple of them and get a good look at it. But then second, if I'm sending somebody on my behalf, I want them to make sure that whatever it is they're taking back with them is the same item that I just paid for. That seems like a perfectly logical precaution to take. Yes.
Absolutely.
Seems reasonable. And I don't think it's being unreasonable. I think if you're paying, obviously, at any level, but realistic, if you're paying a premium amount, wouldn't you want that extra assurance? Would that not make sense for you to take, again, a minor, maybe a slight inconvenience for you, but to have that extra layer of security to know that en route is the item that you paid for, that has been vetted and looked at by somebody that you're trusting to go and be your eyes and ears to make sure something doesn't look off.
Oh, absolutely. So much could have been done. Obviously, the person has means, has money. I mean,
he could have sent Tom. Tom could have been his emissary.
Listen, if the guy's a billionaire, you could have paid Tom. Tom's a sellout. He's doing Hertz commercials. You pay him
for billionaires, Eric. We're all sellouts.
Yeah. So I mean, he'll do it for money. He's
sure.
a total sellout. The Kennedys bought him out, and he lied to me and took my money. So,
listen, the fact that he lied to you shows that it must have cost a lot of money for him to lie to you.
Did anybody catch this? This is a small detail. Okay. I'm going into FBI mode here. Andy will be proud of me. So if everything about this was overseas, right? He got called from a Mexican phone number.
Presumably.
The money,
that's, again, we're basing it on what the text message.
The conversation, right.
Yeah.
The money was transferred to a foreign bank account. Why was it coined with an American quarter? That's literally the coin, and it's an American quarter.
Yeah.
Where's this overseas foreign stuff coming from? Like, they're in America. That's a U.S. quarter, right? An older one at that.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Details.
But yes. So bottom line, we thought it was worthwhile mentioning because honestly, the text message thread was entertaining in and of itself. If we had just focused on the text message thread, there was a lot of gold there to mine.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen. They got to figure that stuff out. I just don't, I wouldn't just randomly send 325K unless I've got some kind of assurances on my, look, I need some, Eric, what have I always said? You need people. In this situation, you need some people whose job it is to take care of your interests, especially for a high value transaction. And those people would be the one watching your back, making sure everything's cool from front to back, beginning to end of the transaction. This is where your people pay dividends, Eric. You need your people.
Absolutely. This is just so ridiculous. It just goes to show you that rule number 1 has nothing to do with your bank account.
And that was my main point. That's what I was trying to get at, is that common sense does not have an income tax level, because there is a lack of common sense at every single tax bracket that we've been able to show. And in this case, you would think that at that, again, you see the collection and everything, you think, oh, no, they are still prone to the same mistakes that the person making the $100 transaction at the card show is willing to make. Because you're just trying to take a shortcut where you could take that extra step. I understand it's an inconvenience, but maybe one set of eyes catches something that looks a little off, or an alarm bell goes off, and you save a lot of money. Just a small extra little step along the way might have saved you from a headache. We'll see what happens. Like, we'll keep an eye on it, but it is an interesting story. But
listen, if the seller is from Mexico and this guy's in the buyers from the United States, and listen, that money's gone. He's never going to see the card. The money's gone. The whole thing was a scam. They scammed him. They won. There's nothing you can do about it. Unless you are so angry that you're willing to spend twice that on private investigators and, other violent type people to go into Mexico and do your bidding. there's nothing. You're screwed. You're done.
Look, like I said, all I know is that if we find out that somebody in Mexico bought a Cheetozard, it might be a clue. We might. Do you think it might all come
Hashtag
together?
invest. He's turning that Brady into better use.
Just saying. Just saying. Remember, people. Bam.
Yeah.
Cheetozard week. Bam. Anyway, all right. So, a couple quick hitters on the end here. I did have a little bit of fun. Obviously, I want to thank folks for the engagement on the Cheetozard video. We did have some fun with that. And then also had picked up that Medano 1 of 1. So, I had a little bit of good feedback on that.
That
Appreciate
was a sweet card.
I liked it. I was a big fan. I did double check actually.
The patch, though.
Oh wait, listen. I'll swatch the American patch that means nothing with another American patch that means nothing. I'll swap it out for the Canadian patch. That'll fix it.
Yeah. Why not?
So anyway, what I was going to say was that so no, great card, and I did double check. The base version is actually numbered to 25. So actually, it did have a numbering on it. I forgot. I found it in the box. So the base version's out of 25. I have that one. I have the 1 of 1 now. There's a gold out of 10. So if I come across it at some point, I'll grab it to complete the little mini rainbow, which would be a nice rainbow. It's pretty cool. So I'm a big fan of that. So now it's in the box with the other ones, which is great. Did buy a Dennis PC 1 of 1 earlier today. Had a good deal with that. I mentioned that to Brandon before we hit record. Yes. So listen, it's good times in the PC. Eric. It's good times.
Did you buy it from someone in Mexico for 600 and something thousand?
A little bit less than that. I bought it from someone that had it on eBay. So just so we're clear, I know, like, listen, I know we're talking heady stuff here, but so do you know, I bought it from a person, Brandon, that had it on ePack. So then after I paid, they pushed the button, and then I had it on ePack, and then I had it shipped to me.
Holy shit!
I know.
It
was like I paid, and then I got it immediately. It was wild.
That's.
I actually got saved searches to work properly recently, and I unlocked 2 cards that I've really been looking for and wanting. Neither one of them came in yet, but I was able to secure 2 and remove off of my saved searches list. So
good times. So good times in the PCs is all I'm saying, man. Good times in the PCs. A quick side note, and I'll report back if I end up doing it. One thing that I was looking at though, and kind of paying attention to the Fanatics Live from this past weekend, I was looking at a couple of different cards that I thought were interesting. I didn't want to make a play for them, obviously, since I just bought a big card, and I do want to start saving up for the Spring Expo. But I will say, speaking of Spring Expo, also in the same vein, that's why I wanted to quickly touch on a couple of quick hitter PC things. Our mutual friend Eric Quincy, Steve, actually posted a Medano on the Instagrams, and I did double check. And that one I did not have. I always have to double check. I did not have it, so I messaged him and I said, "You bringing that Expo?" Yep. Set it aside. So I may already have my first Spring Expo deal already completed before we start. So that may be which is always nice when you see it, because he can't be sure. He never checks with me, because at the end of the day I've got a lot of stuff already. So and it's out of 50, so it's not like the lowest number or whatever, but it is actually one I need. So I was like, no, set it aside. I'll take that. So I already have a deal for spring, so we're already taking care of that. But one thing that I'm looking into doing, and I'll report back if I end up doing this, is I'm going to go through my Not Swell Fella PC box, and I've got a lot of nice stuff that I like, but I'm thinking about maybe consolidating some of it to get into a couple of nicer pieces, because with that one, I never wanted the collection to balloon too much. And I feel like it's getting close to ballooning, and I was like, I kind of don't want it to fill up the whole box. I want it to be quality over quantity. I like my Not Swell Fella stuff, and I've got some stuff that I think can go. And if I get a couple of bucks for those cards, it can be then converted into a couple of nicer cards that I can switch up for it. Still be Not So Fella, but I'll swap out a couple of lesser ones for a couple of slightly nicer ones. The old consolidation thing.
Yeah.
So for that PC, it makes more sense. The Medano one is more broad-based. There's a lot of different levels and a lot of different stuff. But that one, I wanted it to be nicer stuff in the first place. So I think I'm going to use some of the equity I've already got in some of the cards, and that would be a nice way of maybe trading it up into some nicer cards. So we'll see. I will report back if I end up going down that route. All right. So let me kind of finish up here. We're okay on time, so I think we can touch on this topic for a couple of minutes. I'll give you guys the layout of what I was thinking, and then I want to get your take on this. One of the things we always talk about when it comes to the collecting is that a lot of times for most of us, collecting starts off from a nostalgia standpoint. There's a connection to either the past or something that we saw, a game, a player, a moment, whatever. It can be whatever. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But nostalgia can be problematic. It can be dangerous. So I want to touch on the other side of it because the first part of it is pretty self-evident. We talk about it all the time. Like it's very common. But one concern I always have when it comes to the nostalgia thing is that sometimes it can be more harmful than anything else. And there's a couple of reasons why I would offer that. One of them is that it sometimes causes you to idealize the past in a way that didn't happen. You kind of gloss over, you take off some of the rough edges and you make it a little nicer than what it was. But the other thing also is because of that, and this is why I say it can be dangerous, and this will bring it into the collecting side of things. If you gloss over the rough edges too much and you make it so idealized, you almost run into the situation where you start having this fantasy that nostalgic period was so much better than the present that all of a sudden you can't enjoy the present. Because again, you're comparing it to this idealized version of the past that really wasn't. So I'll explain what I mean. One example, and again, I'm going to stick to the collecting side of it, but we can draw from wherever you want. A lot of times people will look back and they'll think, when I was a kid, collecting was so much pure and this and that. And that can be true. But sometimes it's because you had blinders on, like you decided to ignore what was going on around you, even though it was still part of the equation. I'll listen to some folks that are around my age that they'll talk about this, and I go like, there were full-time dealers back then, man. Those dealers were trying to rip you off too.
Yeah.
Like, let's not pretend cons started like in the last 5 years. Like that's an extreme version, but I hear this.
The day the human race invented money, the con man came 5 seconds after that.
Yeah. But
I think it was before that when they were just trading stuff.
Before that, yeah. Where they were conning each other over seashells and rocks and shiny rocks.
Yeah.
But so Brandon, I want to make sure you're understanding what I'm getting with this as well. I'll listen to this and I'll be hearing it and I'll be like, you're telling me your experience. Maybe you didn't get it ripped off by a dealer when you were a kid. Hey, that's awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Then you haven't been jaded by that. But like, no, the moment they were full-time dealers and everything, their job was to make money. That does not mean they have to be trying to rip you off. But my point is, there was still a financial incentive. Right from the moment that was a thing, there's still a financial incentive. So it's not like it was the purity of collecting, the purity of the hobby, the purity of, if you want to do that, then we got to go before full-time dealers, Brandon. And the problem is, if I go to full-time dealers, the full-time dealers were starting around 73, 74, around the mid-70s. So in order for you to have avoided them, you have to be at least in your 60s, pushing into your 70s to have experienced a world where full-time dealers were not even a thing.
You mentioned the keyword business, and
yeah,
it's going to go back further than this, but this is one that's always brought up and remembered. First of all, we need to understand that when cards came out, they were literally advertising pieces. They were inclusive with items or whatever to help sell items, right? So these companies were trying to make money. And the one that stands out is the Gaudi Napa LaJoie, because it was intentionally withheld from being distributed because they knew people would be chasing to complete the set. But if they couldn't get the one card, what would they do? They would continuously go back to buy. So when you mention, the nostalgia and whether or not there were shady practices happening then, that's happened before most all of our times. So the answer is easily yes. I think where a lot of things have changed today is the nature of things being known and social media, the YouTube, the news, even all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of put it more to the forefront. Whereas even maybe in the 80s and 90s, even though we had the magazines and that kind of stuff that we could browse through and there might be articles there, we had shops, we had, small shows and that sort of thing. I don't think it was as spoken of or as presented out into the public as much. So maybe that's where some of it has changed today. We're seeing it more, we're hearing it more. It's a constant thing being fed. But really, when we look at some of the stuff back from the 80s and 90s, and I'm using that period and go ahead and make the old jokes, that's where the nostalgia hits for us. But there was a lot of shit that took place then too. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't this moral compass of purity. Like,
So that's kind of my underlying point. You touched on a couple of key points. One of them is that the social media age means that all the stuff, you get to see it. You get to see it in real time. You get to see it quickly. Like, simple example. In the same podcast episode that we're talking right now, the episode that truly, praise be to Cheetozard. But on this very episode that we're talking about this, we talked about that deal that seems to have gone wrong for that $650,000 transaction. But here's the thing. As entertaining as it is, and we had a lot of fun with that. Like, let's be honest. But 30 years ago, we wouldn't have heard about it. And it doesn't matter if it wouldn't have been for 650,000. We would have taken off a couple of decimal points. But the reality, though, is like in 1990, if it was a $65,000 deal,
was big, yeah.
Yeah, it was monster. That'd be a huge deal. Or even 6,500 is still a lot of money. Like, we're talking big dollars in relative terms to a lot of people's income and what they were buying stuff for and all that. Most people didn't have $6,000 to hold around 30 years ago to spend on something like that. The point is that it's not the dollar amount. It's that it was a big transaction, but we wouldn't have heard about it unless you were in the right circles, unless, you heard about it from a guy, because if you're not involved in it, you're not going to see it posted on Instagram. There is no Instagram. You're not going to see it posted on the internet. Going back 30 years, we have the internet. So right now, 30 years from today, 1995. But we're basically on dial-up. Like, the flow of the information is not nearly as fast. So maybe you'll hear about it. Maybe you'll catch wind of it on a bulletin board somewhere.
I think that's pre-eBay still.
Yeah, and it is just a couple of years. eBay was coming a couple of years later, but 95, you're talking still kind of AOL message boards, bulletin board systems, still a little bit.
And it would have been
dial-up for sure.
It would likely would have been a cash/check/ certified check, something like that transaction. Yep. It wouldn't have been an electronic
money order.
transaction.
A money order would have been a money order, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So it'd been something in that vein. So the point is that, and this is kind of what I'm getting at here with this, Eric, is that it's not that people were not being fraudulent 30 or 35 years ago. It's just that the information flowed slower. So maybe somebody could get away with it longer for no other reason than the information is not moving from point A to point B as fast. But today, it's in your face. If I want to find out about the latest problem on whatnot, all I got to do is check on the internets. It'll take me 5 seconds and I'll see a video and I'll see a post and I'll see this and I'll see that. And I can hear about all kinds. Yannick literally posted Rattle Pokemon's video that you made reference to earlier. And it was another wonderful, wholesome moment and whatnot. But the point is, it's one of many. If all I want to do is report on whatnot, scandals, issues, scams, sellers behaving badly, that could be its own show. Because there's enough material. And I can provide you video. I can provide you audio. I can show you pictures. And I can do all that. And I could literally do entire shows based on that. But we simply have access to it. We just have so much more access. Same thing also on the upside. Like, it's not all negative. It also means that if a card is tough to pull, you might still be able to see it. Back in the day, if a card was tough to pull and you didn't happen to catch it and somebody didn't pull it around you, you didn't know if it existed for sure because you didn't see it. You had to take somebody's word for it. Today, I can find out that the Paul Skeens 1/1 Logo Man thing, the MLB debut patch was pulled. I can see a picture of it. I can see information on it. We can talk about it. Like, we have the information so much quicker. But because of all that, it means that we get the good, but we also get the bad. So we can be inundated with the bad, which might lead you to think, oh my God, it must be so much more prevalent than back in the day, where maybe it is more prevalent, Brandon, but maybe it's because we're starting off with a bigger baseline of people. So it becomes so the percentage might be similar, but now we have more people as a baseline, so you're going to get higher numbers anyway.
Well, here's the other thing that I think it puts a little bit more emphasis on it today. depending on how far back you go, you didn't really have the autographs and the relics. We talked about that earlier, patch swapping and stuff. You didn't have the grading existing, and whether or not people like or dislike grading, um, we can say that the companies are neutral. They're, we can say they're all on the same level in terms of grading and all that stuff and how they perform. But there's also the shady side of it where there's the fake slabs or people trying to find ways to swap cards out or grade fake cards or whatever. So there is some added elements to the shadiness that's going on along with the social media. But let's not forget, and since you use 30 years as a good pointer because it puts us at 95, which is kind of on that cusp of pre-tech moving into tech.
Yeah.
It's also
And we still
kind
had
of,
internet. That's kind of why I like as a cutoff. We still
yeah,
had
and
internet.
it's close to the introduction of autographs being on cards. That came, what, 91, I think, was the first year Upper Deck had them and
For
stuff.
Upper Deck, yeah. For Upper Deck
Yeah.
specifically, yeah.
And then you started getting to the, so we're in that period. But let's not forget, let's say cards were just simple, basic things, no parallels, just basic cardboard all the way through. You still had the memorabilia and stuff like the Operation Bullpen and all that stuff where it was literally a ring that was forging autographs and stuff. And it probably happened pre to that. So it's not like people weren't doing shady shit. It just wasn't as known. It wasn't as heard about. It wasn't as financially impacting either. That's another thing. You're talking a hobby box today. We're like going crazy that it's $100 because that's a bargain. And back then, a pack of cards was what, a quarter, so the whole box was, $15 maybe or so. So it in relative terms though, I before you say it, finances have changed, so $15 then to $100 today is, might be on a similar level. It would hit somebody's checkbook, but it doesn't seem like it's as impactful because today, when you talk about the nostalgia and people go back to it, they still believe that, and I'm guilty of it sometimes, we still wish that everything could be as cheap as it was back then.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I think
it still
that's
hits
fair.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the key though, what kind of led me down this path, and maybe you'll kind of get this, and I'll bring you in on this one, Eric. One of the things, so I'll use myself as an example, but then I'll expand it out, and you guys can take in whatever direction you want. Whenever I think about my heyday in starting up, in collecting and doing all that, so for me, it's the 90s. That was the 10-year period that really was the formative years, but also what really got the ball rolling on a lot of my collections and things that I do today. So the period between 1990 and 1999. So for me, I was between 7 and 17 years old that decade. So for me, I have fond memories of collecting. I have fond memories of the music. I have fond memories of some TV shows. I have fond memories of some movies. But, and this is something I specifically avoid doing, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you that was the greatest decade of music and television and pop culture of all time and everything. I may feel that way, but I also remember that I'm living that one. I didn't live the full decade of the 80s. I lived in the decade of the 80s, but it's not the same being 0 years old to 7 years old as it is being 7 to 17. I have a much stronger recollection of that 10-year period. The next 10 years, I'm, 17, 18 in the 27. Obviously, I have a good recollection of that. I have some good memories in the early 2000s as well. But the point is that 90s period, it holds a certain prestige for me in my lifetime. But that doesn't mean it was the greatest decade of all time. It just doesn't.
Let Eric chime in because
might,
I got something I want to add to this.
Yeah. But do you get what I'm generally saying? If I was sitting there and I suddenly made that pitch, I might be able to make that pitch and it might ring true for me, but that doesn't make it objectively true. And by the way, and this is where nostalgia gets dangerous. What if I try to make that pitch to you and then suddenly pretend there was nothing wrong with the decade? Nothing bad happened. And I'm like, well, that isn't true. It wasn't perfect, but none of them are. Like if we go and literally look at, we can find issues. But what if you pretended that nothing ever went wrong? What if you pretended it was this Shangri-La where everything was perfect and everyone was great? And it's like, but then if you're from the outside, you're looking at it like, that's not true. That's 100% not true. That's a lie you're telling yourself, sir. That's why find myself always making sure to try to sit back and look at it from the outside and go, no, it wasn't perfect, but I do have a lot of good memories and a lot of good association. There's nothing wrong with having good memories and good associations with it, but it's where you tell yourself a lie and gloss over some of the other stuff where it becomes a little dangerous because now you're lying to yourself a little bit.
You know, our childhood memories play a huge part in what we're doing now in these collections. You know, I think that's why the majority of us collect, to bring back, you know, the fun memories of us being kids. Now we have, you know, the money and the time, and you know, we can do these things. And I think it's important not to step on other people's, and I have to work on it a little bit, you know, being one of these, you know, vintage only guys, and not understanding why somebody would spend $2,000. You know, I think you said earlier tonight, $20,000 for a box of modern cards. Yeah, that makes, it does not compute. Does not compute.
That
Danger,
four
danger.
of those, and you can get a Cheetozard.
Yeah, you know, Danger Will Robinson does not compute. You know, it makes no sense to me. But people collect for different reasons, and if that's what makes you happy and that's what brings you back to a happy time in your life, I think that's important and good, as long as we always say you're not, you know, stretching your finances and getting yourself in trouble, which
In a jam?
in a big jam. And we've seen a lot of people get into a jam.
That's a callback for all y'all listeners.
Yeah, and it was from me. Yeah. And there's been a lot of people that have put themselves in a jam since the pandemic, to, you know, really dangerously. So I don't know how much of that was all financial driven versus nostalgia. You know, I don't know the percentage. I think the majority was financial driven. I don't think, you know, I know I spent a lot sitting at home, and that was all nostalgia. You know, I wasn't buying, you know, vintage hockey cards thinking about making money. I was trying to make sure I made good purchases, not to lose money. So, but yeah, nostalgia is a huge part in this, and it can get you in trouble if you spend more than you have to get those memories back, and you're thinking with your heart instead of your head. And I think some collectors definitely, I see that sometimes at work, where somebody will see something and be like, I always wanted one of those, or I had one of those when I was a kid, and this was my favorite player, and my wife's going to kill me, but you know, that's why, you know, can you hold this for me? I got to do this and this without my wife knowing, and come back. And it's like, listen, I'm not your priest, so, you know, whatever you got to do. You know, I'm here to sell stuff. I'm not here to counsel you not to buy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've seen nostalgia get people in trouble. I see the financial part every single day getting people in trouble. Every day.
Well, that's the financial part is one side of it, but what I was mostly kind of focusing in on is, and I touched on it briefly, and one of the things though, and reason I spent so much time defining it and kind of giving examples and all that, is that the danger for me, beyond the financial, the danger for me is that because we can look back nostalgically on whatever time period is for us, sometimes though, if you do the comparison, you're doing an unfair comparison. You're looking at the present, and in the present, you can see the ugliness. In the present, you can see the issues because they're right in front of your face. We're seeing them all the time. You're comparing it to this idealized, where nostalgia can get dangerous, is you're comparing it to this idealized version of the past that wasn't true, because you cut out all the bad stuff. You kind of conveniently threw it in the closet, hoping that in your brain you suddenly forgot about it. But if you were living in the moment, you would see it. But then when you got far enough removed from it, all you remember is the good stuff. And you completely forget about the other stuff. And then you're comparing it to the present, where you're seeing the other stuff at the same time. So there can be good stuff, but then you're also seeing the bad stuff. So all of a sudden, on balance, this looks like so much worse than the past, where you got rid of all the bad stuff in your head. If you get what I'm saying.
So what I wanted to, when you were talking about your like 7 to 17 thing, that's
Sure.
kind of where I wanted to focus on, because
Sure.
you're right about it in the take of, and I'm just going to coin the 90s. So just say the 90s.
Sure. Sure.
So a lot of people, and I'm sure we've all said it, this was better in the 90s. The music was better. These movies were better, and especially if you sit down and watch, or you throw on like a Spotify 90s playlist, you're like, oh man, I remember this, right? I think some of it, and Eric, I want to bring you into this because this is something that I've had a conversation with the missus about. For one, our childhoods, the period, the society, the cards, everything before pre-social media, everything was so much more simple. I'm not saying it was pure. I'm not saying it was genuine. I'm not saying there was no shadiness, but it was so much more simple. That's part of it, because when we look back on it, we remember those times and how everything seems so much slower, especially when we were kids. I talk about this all the time. It is crazy how when you're growing up, your birthday took forever to get there. School days were the longest things ever. Christmas never came. Now, shit, we're in March of 2025 already. It feels like we were just talking about, 2020. Like, that's how fast time moves. But then we also have lived in the most unique age ever in existence, I think, because we were in the period when the only phones were attached by a cord on a wall or in a phone booth. We were pre-pagers, we were pre-cell phone, we were pre-internet, we were pre-computers, all of that stuff, and we've advanced with it. And I mentioned Eric on this because you've raised kids during this period. When kids today hit high school, me and her looked at each other and were like, how in the hell do we handle this? Because it was simple when we were in school. You had a problem with somebody, you either fought it out or you wrote letters or whatever, right? It was held within the school. And today it hits the entire freaking universe because it's plastered on TikTok or Instagram or what is a Snapchat or whatever else, and they're talking shit that way, and you're like, I don't know how to handle this because I've never had to deal with this. Like, that isn't how we dealt with it, right? So it was a much calmer time. It was a much simpler, easier time. It was a safe place for us because, yeah, there might have been shit going on, but it really wasn't bad. We didn't notice it because it wasn't plastered in our face and it wasn't everywhere. And I think that's a big part of it, especially for folks like our age, because we've seen this crazy shift. I mean, shit, we got electronic cars now that drive themselves. They never gave us the Jetsons mobile, but they gave us these stupid ass Cybertrucks, right? We got gypped on that. I just feel it was a lot more simpler, and a lot of times we would like to go back there because it was.
But Brandon, though, you gotta admit though, Brandon, though, while we didn't get the flying cars, we did get the Cheetos.
We did get Cheetozard.
I'm saying, like, it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
1995 was pre-Pokemon. It was even pre-Japan Pokemon. Like, that's how long ago it was.
The olden days.
I will say this. For me, and I'm only speaking for me, all right? Because if I look at the big picture outside of my own little bubble, I see all the negatives. But for me, technology, the internet has expanded my collection enjoyment tenfold plus. Because, and I've said this before, I had one little card shop in town in 1988 when I started. That was as far as collecting went, right? Card shows started popping up in the 90s. and expanded a little there. When the internet showed up and you had eBay, the world exploded. And I had to wait, and because I was a late bloomer in getting into the interwebs and things. It didn't interest me. During the pandemic, I took a leap and started exploring things on YouTube involving the hobby. I then heard about this Clubhouse thing and took another leap and got involved in that. The growing technologies that I didn't have as a kid has made this so much more fun for me. I'm doing things like this now. I know people from all over the world. I've developed real friendships and relationships and people I can talk to about this hobby. I for the majority of my time from 88 to 2020, I did this hobby completely alone. I I had a few buddies collected baseball stuff, but I had no one that was interested in hockey stuff. So I've really enjoyed the change and the growth of technology and the hobby through that, because I don't need to have all this. We could stop doing this tomorrow and I'd be okay. I could go back to not sharing cards on Instagram. I'm fine with that. But it has been more enjoyable. So, I've enjoyed the way things have changed for me and in my bubble through technology and growth since the pandemic started in late 2019, early 2020. So it's been 5 years about that I've experienced things. I've gone to Toronto a handful of times. I walk around. I can't believe it. I'm walking around Toronto, and then all of a sudden I know so many people there. And through this show, people come up and ask me if I'm me.
You tell them no, please.
No,
Don't tell the UFC fighter who I am.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's ludicrous. To have people come up to you and ask you if you're you is ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. So it's been a fun 5 years compared to the I don't know. I don't want to do the quick math from 88 to 2020. Very different collecting experience.
And just imagine trying to do this podcast, Brandon, in 1995. We'd have to open the windows and yell really loud.
Man,
we just hope for the best.
Yeah,
it'd be a little awkward. Listen, I'm not doing it, man. Like, that's a lot of yelling.
String cans and string. You're gonna get a lot of string.
Yeah, I don't know how we would have even done it.
It would have been through tape recorders and phones. It would have been really lame. It would have been like absolute trash. It would have been.
I was trying to think.
Trash.
Like, I remember it was around 98, maybe 90. Yeah, 98 probably. The first online game that I started playing. I think that's when those started getting really popular.
Still haven't done an online game. I have no idea.
So the thing is, just to kind of put a button, close the loop on this. So my main idea behind taking this conversation was that I wanted to kind of give a little perspective. The bottom line was I wanted to give some perspective because I can say that we're experiencing a different version of it. Even in this episode, like I said, we're talking about a $650,000 deal gone wrong, which would have been impossible, 20, 30 years ago. Or we wouldn't have heard about it. Like, it wouldn't have been a thing for us. We're, to Eric's point, we're doing something right now with the technology available that was not available 25, 30 years ago. In contrast to Eric, my family were early adopters. We had internet in my house in 1994. We had broadband internet, early broadband. This is like 1 megabit, still broadband though. It wasn't dial-up. in 1999. Well, that's 26 years ago. So that's still early days of broadband. Still fairly early in a lot of circles. Some places didn't even have it. It didn't matter if you wanted it. You couldn't get it. You were using T3 lines and T1 lines. Go Google that one, kids. T1 lines and T3 lines. You'll know. The real ones know. But it was broadband. It was early broadband. So technically I could have done like an audio, I could have had an audio conversation with somebody over the internet. It would have been audio only. Very bare bones, very basic. They would have also needed broadband because that would have been enough for audio. You could have had a conversation that way instead of over the phone. But it was very early days. Like it was very, very rudimentary. The internet was still developing. eBay was on by that point, by 99, eBay was online and we were buying stuff and selling stuff and all that, but it was still early days. Like we did not have, I think PayPal was still a couple of years away. So we were still using the money orders and checks and all that. I had people mail me cash. I had people mail me cash.
Yes, I mailed cash.
Yeah.
I mailed small amounts of cash. And if the numbers got bigger, you wrote a check. And if they got bigger after that, you went and got a bank check.
And that was,
but there were people that would literally tape change to an index card.
Yeah.
They tape change to it and throw that on the envelope.
Yep.
And I don't think there was tracking numbers displayed
really, no.
on eBay back then. So you had to just trust, like, we're laughing at this $650,000 deal, but we used to actually do deals that way.
It was not
but
cross-border. I was buying stuff from U.S. sellers, and I pretty much had to acknowledge that it would take 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd pay for the item, and it would take a week for the payment to get there. And then after they received the payment, then they would mail it back to me, and then it would take like 2.5. So this transaction would take about a month.
Yeah,
and end to end. That was the only way.
For all of the people that gripe about the eBay fees and how they charge the fees on shipping, if you weren't around back then, there was this little way that people caught on to save them some money on fees, where they would do a 1 cent, because you could do 1 cent buy it now. And then say you wanted $100 for the card.
Yeah, you put it on the shipping.
1 cent buy it now with $100 shipping.
Yeah, basically.
And eBay only got the fees on the 1 cent.
Yeah, and for the record, that's what ruined it for all of us, because we could make a couple extra bucks on shipping. It was a good time if you didn't abuse it.
Though.
If you didn't abuse it,
like, oh my god,
drive it into the ground.
And that's why now the fees are on everything.
Yeah, they didn't fall for that one. You can only pull the football back so many times, Lucy, before Charlie Brown caught on to that one. It ruined it for everybody.
I do want to say though, in all seriousness, there is a
Cheetozard?
lot of shit that goes. What's that?
Cheetozard, as soon as you said it all serious, I'm like, Cheetozard?
There's a lot of negative shit that goes on today. I'm not happy with the prices of products and all that. I'm not going down that path, but if I was someone coming in today, as wild of a world it is and as so many options there are, like Eric said, there is a lot of benefits to the hobby today. We can look at the simpler times and want to live in the past. But there's so many options. Like, even the parallel's sake, if you truly want to collect and you have 50 different parallels, you can easily pick the color you want that fits, whatever collection you want to build. And in many cases, because there's so many of them, you can get the cards of your favorite player relatively cheap. And there's so many options of your favorite players today. It may not fit everybody. It might be a lot of fluff in there. But if you truly want to collect, there is a lot available. With breaking, we can talk about how bad breaking is. But at the same time, it is getting cards out there for people that may just want to buy the cards and collect. So we can talk about all the bullshit, but there's a lot of positives and ways to have fun in today's space. So
yeah, I think it's fair. And real quick, and I'll leave the last word for you, Eric. Overall, the reason why I thought it would be fun to touch on that topic, it was open-ended because you can go in a lot of different directions, and we did. But the thing is, having lived that version of the hobby past, And what inspired me was actually a Wesker Griff thing where a comment he made where he would love to go back, you know, even for him, it was just going back pre-pandemic. And I laugh because, there's nothing wrong with that sentiment. I have no issue with it. But my thought is having lived that period all the way for me, from 1990 to present, with the whole being there the whole time, all the different eras, all the different things, even knowing what I know, I wouldn't go back. I like knowing what I know. I like having experienced what I already experienced. It gives me that perspective.
Oh, yeah.
I like the options available today. I don't want to just have a base set where that's all there is, because that's just not that interesting to me. I'm not a set collector. I'm a player collector. So then I just get one card and that's it for the collecting year, and I got to wait for like another year for another product to come out. That's not very exciting to me. That's not very engaging to me. For some, that's fine, but for me, it's not as interesting. I like having the dynamics of all this different stuff. The technology side. I like the fact I have the ability to do this. I like the fact that I have the ability to put Cheetozard on the screen. I know. But I can do that now. Whereas I could not have done that 10, 15, 20 years ago. That wouldn't have been an option. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the capability. We can do this instantaneously. We can arrange for this where that was not possible at that time. And in real time, I can be like, my buddy posts a thing on Instagram. It's a card I need that I'm going to pick up at Expo. I message him quickly. I say, hey, can you hold it for me? He says, no problem. Done. I make a transaction on Facebook earlier today, get a 1-1 card for my collection. Done. I check eBay. I find something cool. Done. I sell a card, which gives me money to do it. I can do this all today.
If you stay in your lane and you stay within your finances, this is the greatest time to be in the hobby. It's when you get out of your lane and you go beyond your finances when the car crashes, and then we get all the hobby drama.
Sure. And I just like having that perspective on it, because then it reminds you that, yeah, there's some challenges now that were not challenges back then. It was a simpler time, but I guess I'm not a guy who is looking for simplicity for simplicity's sake. I like being challenged, and maybe this will be the way I put it, Brandon. I actually like being challenged as a hobbyist. I find challenge then allows me to persevere over it and find what I want to do, because now I have all these options. Now I have all this. If you're brand new and you're not used to any of this complexity, then I understand. This is actually the onboarding is like this. Like you have to almost get up to speed so fast, as opposed to back in the day where you could kind of ease into it because it wasn't that wild. It wasn't that crazy. So for that, I understand. Or if you're somebody who took a long time away and came back, and all of a sudden it's like you went from one lane moving at moderate speed to a super highway overnight. I understand. I get that. But I don't need to go back. I'm not doing dial-up again, Brandon. I'm not listening to that sound. No, I'm not going back.
I just wanted to close on one thing.
Go for it.
Can I close the show out?
Please.
All right. You got any last words, Eric? And phrase them in the form of Cheetozard.
I'm still with screw those guys at whatnot. That'd be my last words.
All right, Brandon, it's all you. Make it happen.
Okay. So I want to close the show out by just notifying all of the hashtag investors and everything. Connor Bedard has now played 128 games in his NHL career. Coincidentally, through the 2021-2022 season, Jason Robertson had exactly 128 games through his NHL career. And through those 128 games, Jason Robertson actually had 58 goals, 20 more than Connor Bedard's 38 goals that he has scored, as well as 15 more points. So for all of those who spent a ton of money on Connor Bedard, you invested in the wrong player. There we go.
And for those of you who have the internet, you can look up the context to find out that Chicago is vastly garbage team compared to the Dallas team that Brandon is comparing it to. He's comparing apples to frozen oranges. Not even apples to oranges.
All I'm saying is Robertson's better than Bedard. Sorry for all of those that have lost significant amounts of money.
I see. And on that bombshell, we thank AMG for supporting the podcast and the channel. We hope you all have a wonderful Cheetozard. May the Cheetozard be with you. And I will get more mileage of this on Friday. I promise you this as a people. I guarantee it. Listen, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. Anyway,
You got to get the flaming hots.
It's Gonna get the flaming hots. Listen, I thank you all for indulging us in this. Hopefully, in the course of Brandon, we covered a lot of ground tonight. In the course of this, hopefully, you got something out of those. We would love to get your thoughts on any of them. Any of the topics we touched on, there were a bunch of different ones. Hopefully you understood that the last section was kind of just more of a thought exercise than anything else. I didn't have a specific direction we wanted to go. I just wanted to talk out some of the nostalgia thing, the past, the present, how it relates. For me, though, and this will be the way I'll encapsulate it, I want to make sure. I just think if you're a collector in today, don't let the nostalgia, don't let the past rob you of enjoyment in the present. If you've got a problem with the present because there is a problem, then fine. Hey, I'm not going to say, look, the whatnot thing has proven that there can be issues. But don't then compare it to an idealized version of the past and think that that's the reason why you're saying the present is no good. Let the present stand on its own, because in 10 or 15 years, you might look back on the present and go like, it wasn't so bad. And that's kind of the thing that sometimes happens, because the next generation comes in and you realize, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Or maybe it was better than I thought. Who knows? You won't find out until you're done. When you're living in it, it's probably the wrong time to evaluate it. That's all I'm really getting at with that. So hopefully you understand that and try to give yourself that perspective. Sometimes standing back, you might realize something that maybe doesn't jive with what you initially thought. So that's it for this one. More videos coming up on the channel. Live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The longest running episodic, whatever it is. We're 5% less mature. Let the Cheetozard flow freely through the live stream lands, because they probably will. So, Brandon, Bobbles and Bottle Cars, known Associated 540 Flips, Eric Sanderson d'Or, and Cheetozard Connoisseur. More coming up in the future. Thank you very much for this one. We'll catch you in the next one.